I'll move on to Yuri's, and I'll do Yuri's right here since I have the references already. So Yuri is asking about this. So again, when I'm looking at this, and I'll pull this view up, and I'll make it a little bit brighter so that since we're talking about it, this looks like two separate pieces. So I assume like when they made this piece, it is plastic. So maybe this light gray part that we're looking at with the cutouts on the side is probably, maybe it was made in a mold or something like that. So they have like a depression here that they cut out to then put this piece in with all the mechanical parts, and maybe there's more mechanical pieces underneath it. Obviously, we don't have to really worry about that. We just want to, get the look correct here. So we have some sort of depression or cutout that's happening to put the record player mechanics into it, and then it also has rounded corners. So with Cinema 4D and with 3D programs, obviously there's a lot of different ways that you can approach these sort of questions that we have with this particular shape. Since we did bools last week, that might be one way that you want to approach this. I mean, if you wanted to use modeling modes, you could always make this shape here. You could, extrude, and then you could make sure that you have like this little section here, this little rectangle, and maybe you use loop cuts to create it, and then you could use your modeling tools to form the shape and then extrude it down. So at this point, if you're more comfortable with modeling tools and you like using the extrude and you like using the cutting tools, that might be one way you'd like to approach this. It'd be a great way to approach it just because you'll then have it all as one piece, and you won't be relying on the bool calculating that every frame. But the bool is another quick way to go about that particular shape. Your goal here would be to whatever you use would be that you do need to create two different levels. You need to have like the top level where all of these little knobs and buttons and the record player piece itself with the handle and all of that is on the same level, but then you have this piece here that's obviously pushed a little bit farther down, and that's why you're seeing this little gap here, because this is like a space here. You would be able to sort of stick your nail in here. This is not like a ribbon or something like that. This is actually like a gap. You can see a little bit better here. Here it starts to look like it might be something else, but here you can see that it's actually, this is basically a hole that this is inside of. Okay, so I think unless you're feeling inclined to use modeling tools, you would need to do loop cuts to get the rectangular form here, and then you could use you move your points around to curve the corners. I'm going to show you how to do it with a bool. I think that might be the more feasible solution, considering that we just did bools last week. You could always try modeling tools as well, and maybe I'll make an example of that later, but a bool will be a quick way to approach that sort of feature that's here. Okay, so I already have the cube for the body of my casing. Okay, so, and obviously it doesn't have any other details to it, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is right now. I'm going to call it body so you guys know that that's that. I'm just going to, again, I'm going to do it really rough, and I'm not going to really worry about the details. So what you would need is you would need a cutout in the shape of this little platform that this is all on. So the reason a bool might be a good way to approach this is because whatever you create to make the little platform for this, you could just reuse that, copy and paste that shape, make it a little bigger, and use it to cut out the hole that it's in. So that might be the best approach for that. So if you grabbed another cube, I'll pull that up. If you want to use a cube, you could come here. You have the fillet and you could try and use the fillet, a bigger number on there, to create a rounded edge here on this. I'll go to this view. Okay, and you can see, let me actually dim this view again. Okay, you can see with the cube that it does, as soon as I add the fillet, I do get a little controller here for the corner that I could then grab that. You see, and I could grab that and I could adjust what size that the radius is for that, for the fillet. But I do have the fillet on to do that, to be able to use that little spot there. So I'm going to change the size of it. And I'm matching it currently, because I'm trying to do is like sort of kill two birds with one stone. I'm matching it to the little platform that all of this stuff is on, the dials and the handle and whatnot. And then I'll just resize it to do the cutout. Okay, so and I'm just adjusting this little corner here to match it so that it's round. So my cube, fillet, you can see I have fillet checked on, and I'm just adjusting the radius. So instead of typing it down here, from my top view I can actually grab it, and I can adjust that to match my reference. Again, the reference comes in really handy. This top view reference is sort of super essential for working on this. It just ends up making things a lot easier than having to sort of guess. You can see everything from the top view, and that helps you be a little bit more accurate. Okay, so now I've got that cube. Okay, and you can see now, again, it's way too tall, so I'm just going to make this shorter. I haven't really been paying attention to what it looks like from the side view. Okay, but I don't really care what it looks like from the side view right now. I just want to worry about the top view. Okay, so that's one way you could do that particular part, is to use a cube with a fillet turned on. If you don't want to do that, another thing that you could do is you could get a rectangle spline, if you would prefer to use a spline, because the rectangle spline, you can come down here and they have rounding, and you can check on rounding, and then as soon as you check on rounding, you'll be able to adjust the rounding, which again will be the edges there. So I'm going to move this over. You know, so as you've seen throughout the semester, there's always multiple ways to approach the same thing, which is good. It gives you more options. So now I could do the exact same shape, but using a rectangle spline instead. Okay, and that would allow me to stick this inside of an extrude, and then that might be, depending on what I'm trying to do, that might be a little bit easier for some things. You'd have to sort of decide what you're trying to do. So from your perspective, you can sort of figure out what makes the most sense. I think I would use the rectangle spline just because I could do a bevel on the caps for this platform, and I could also, it's a little bit easier for me to control the depth, as opposed to the cube. Just so you see, the cube is getting the fillet on the top. You see from this view, it's getting it on the top and the bottom. So if I think that it's rounding too much here, which I think from the references, it probably looks like it's rounding too much on the sides. I can't make it much shorter because then it hits the fillet, and then it changes. You know, this is it. This is as small as I can make it, which kind of turns it into like more of a pill-like shape. So that's one way to approach it, but I think considering what the shape looks like, I feel like it's too round maybe on the sides. So I might have approached this and use the extrude with a rectangle spline inside it instead, just because I have more options here for adjusting it. But that is obviously an extra step, is to make the rectangle spline, then put it into the extrude, then keep adjusting the extrude until you get it the way that you want. So, you know, all the little details that you might be concentrating on. Okay, so regardless of which one I decide I want to use, in this scenario, I've got this object that I'm creating the little platform here for. I didn't do any of the the details for the edges on the extrude. I would go back and do the bevel on the caps and whatnot. But I just want to get this roughly placed. So I've got those two objects for the little platform here. Now I want to do the cutout. Okay, so for the cutout, I would just use this piece. I think I need to adjust it a little bit. It looks maybe a little bit rounder. That might be just the angle of the reference. But I would just use a similar piece, and I would bool it at this point. Okay, if I wasn't going to use the approach of modeling tools. So I'm going to copy and paste the extrude, and I'm going to hide the one that I'm using. I'm going to call this one record player base, or record base. I mean, the whole thing's the record player, so. Okay, and then maybe I'll just call this the, well, actually I'll leave that for now, so that you'll know it's the extrude, just in case. Okay, so I'm gonna resize this one, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and I'd actually prefer to resize the rectangle spline. I think I'll have more control of it that way, instead of the extrude. Because that way I can see, and it does actually, you can see there, it matches up pretty well with my, I'll change the color of my spline for a second. Oh, for whatever reason that's not working. I guess it's because it's in the extrude. That's weird. But you can see if I toggle off the extrude for a second, you can see, oh, there it is. That's weird. There's that I made red now. You can see there's the rectangle spline that I just resized, and the radius here is actually pretty good. Okay, so I'm actually not going to adjust that. I might have to come back and adjust the original, but maybe just changing the size actually matches. That's all you need to do. So I've resized that spline now within the extrude to match the cutout that's in the casing. Okay, so I can turn that back on. And now I'm going to come here, and I've got it intersecting the base. Now, how deep you want it to be, that is going to be important for the extrude, because that's going to determine how deep the cutout is. So I probably want this to be a little bit more. I had 20 centimeters for the base of the record player, so maybe I make this 30 and push it in farther. Okay, so I have a little bit of it sticking out, but all of this down here is going to be the cutout. Okay, and so now I can come up here and I'm going to get myself a bool. Okay, and I'm going to stick the body, the whole case, stick that into the bool, so the whole cube, and then I'm going to stick the extrude. Okay, now it's not going to be happy with the extrude. I'm just going to make sure that you guys see that again. If I stick the extrude in there, okay, oh, actually, it worked. I'm actually kind of surprised that worked. Usually that would want a connect, but I guess it's okay with the extrude because it's looking at the object as opposed to the spline within it. You can see there's my cutout. Okay, if you have any trouble with that, then that would be like what we talked about last week, where we would want to have a connect object in between if the bool is not working on the particular piece that you're using within it. You can use a connect to help. But you can see there's my cutout. Okay, if I want to work on the edges for it, you know, if I think that it needs more, you want to see like a highlight or something like that happening there, then you can go back to the extrude and you can turn like bevel on for the caps, and that will get you, you see that will get you a little detail there. You could always go and use other tools to keep working on that, but I'll just leave it alone. I don't want it to go too deep into this. So I've got my bool. Okay, so now the whole record player is inside that bool, okay, with the cutout. Okay, and then I can turn the bass back on, and I can adjust where that is sitting and put that into the hole. I think let me move this for a second. I think it's flush. So I don't think you need any part of it sticking out. I don't see anything in this reference. You can check the other references, but it looks like it's flush. So I'm actually just going to make sure that the top of this lines up with the top of where the casing is, and I'm going to push the rest of it down. So I think it's good then that I have this is 20 and this one was 30 with a little sticking out, because it looks like the sizing worked out pretty good. Okay, and then you can see from my reference that there is a little perspective in the top view, so that means this is not particularly centered. It's a little bit closer on the top, a little bit bigger gap on the bottom, so that's where you'll have to improvise. You have to come back to your top view here, and you'll have to move it so that it's centered within. Oh, actually, it's not the top view. I must have shifted it myself. Either way, it's good to check and make sure that it's actually centered there. Okay, and if you're looking at this now and you're thinking, okay, this is not exactly as round as it is in the reference, you know, the nice thing about these, they're still parametric. We're not using modeling tools, so I can just come back here and I could just readjust the radius. So it was 25 and looks like it wants to be something more like this is 20, that's 19. I would say 19. That's 18 actually. So looks like that. Okay, so the top one then, the cutout for the top one ended up being 25 for the radius up here, and then this one, the base itself ended up being, I think I did 18. 18, there you go. Okay, undo view, grabbing the wrong button. Okay, and now it looks like that. Now I would definitely want to go back and do edges, because again, all of the edges on this have a little bit of a bevel. So I definitely would want to go back to like the extrude and put like a little bevel on the edges and whatnot, and hopefully that doesn't change the size of things too much. But you can see I just did very quickly, I just did a bevel 2 centimeters, and now I've got a nice little rounded edge there. I probably want to round it a little bit more, but that's a starting point at least. Okay, so that's one way. I think that's probably the way that makes more sense at this moment. Since we just did bools last week, to use a bool for this. But again, you could potentially do that with modeling tools as well. You could use there's definitely other ways to approach it. But if you were using a cube and you wanted to do loop cuts to make that shape, you could do that as well, then end up putting it into a subdivision surface or something to help you smooth out the shape. But again, since we did bools last week, and there's not going to be like a lot of really heavy, very sort of detailed pieces in here, I think the bool might be a quick way to approach that kind of element, and it'll end up being successful. As you can see here, you get the gap, you get the rounding, it all matches the reference, and it looks pretty seamless. So you could do that, or you could approach it another way. Okay, does that answer your question, Yuri?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm happy with this.
Thank
you.
you.